On November 4th, 2008, the people of California voted to fund this, a high-speed rail line. Many countries around the world have
Is the shirt a merch drop? You guys convinced me to make it a merch drop, I'm not gonna lie.
had high-speed trains for decades, and this would be the US's attempt to finally catch up. The train would whisk passengers from LA to San Francisco in under 3 hours, and it was all set to open in 2020. Today, it's 2022, and California's high-speed rail project is famous for being a disaster.
Will be the most expensive project in state history.
A train that's going to nowhere.
Train to nowhere.
All that's there today is this one section, still under construction from Bakersfield to Merced. But the failure of this rail line isn't just California's problem. It's an ominous sign for big projects all over the US.
We see other advanced economies all around the world that are able to do this. So they can do it, so why can't we?
In other words, what is it about the US that made California's high-speed rail line so hard to build? Just to be clear, this was a pretty good idea. A lot of people travel between San Francisco and LA, but the trip takes at least 6 hours by car. It's less than an hour by plane.
I desperately want to go to San Francisco, but I desperately don't feel like going on this fucking drive. This 6-hour drive. And there's no trains that go directly there. There isn't even an Amtrak.
But that's not counting time in two of the country's busiest airports. So a 2-hour and 40-minute trip by high-speed rail made sense. California just needed to design a route that connected its big cities efficiently.
It's really about population density and how quickly you can serve areas of high population density.
This is Ethan Elkind, director for the climate program at UC Berkeley Law School and host of the local State of the Bay radio show.
You really want those centers where there's a lot of people working and living within a few kilometer range of the station. If you don't have that, then it's not worth a high-speed rail stop.
But that's easier said than done. In the early 2000s, the California High-Speed Rail Authority considered two routes in Southern California. This one went straight up the I-5 highway, while this one looped eastward and stopped in Palmdale. It was 34 miles longer, and studies estimated it would be 12 minutes slower. Yet, ultimately, this was the route they chose. So what happened?
So the Palmdale stop was really added at the behest of the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors that wanted to see a stop for high-speed rail in Palmdale. If you have the county that the high-speed rail line is going through opposing it, that can create real political problems, can create litigation problems, can create permitting problems.
Palmdale politicians understandably wanted the train's riders and business opportunities to come to their district. The problem was that they had the power to hold up the entire project to do so. They have this power because the US government gives it to them. The US is a federal system, meaning power is divided between the federal government and state governments.
Which, like, by the way, the craziest thing about this is, like, take New York's train system, for example. It doesn't make sense to make a bunch of different stops that you're like going out of your way to get to these locations. What makes a lot more sense is to build, like, let's say here's like the train line. Here's like, I don't know, 80th Street. And then here's like, I don't know, 34th Street. You build this train line. It's efficient. It's good. It works well. And then you can pick not so arbitrary points of stopping. And at these points of stopping, you can have non-high-speed rails from all of these other areas, which is how transportation in an ideal system is supposed to work. And this is like, this concept is so foreign to Americans, like they literally don't understand how transportation could work because, and I don't blame Americans, it's because they've never lived somewhere that's had decent transportation. I feel so fucking lucky. London Underground map is a thing of beauty. Oh, hi, Timur. I feel so fucking lucky that, like, I grew up in New York because I got to experience good transportation. And you have the main train lines that carry the most amount of people in and out of the city, in and out of Manhattan. And then you have all of these separate train lines that get you to that train line. Or bus. And in areas where building a train line doesn't make sense, it's not very cost efficient, you would do buses. So, like, maybe there's this, like, very long strip of land, but there aren't really a lot of people that live there. Maybe you could do a bus. And that would make way more people take the train system. Perfect. Feeder buses, yeah. So it's like you have your fast rail system, then you have the slower rail systems that take you there, and then you have buses that take you there. So if you're really far out, you just need to take a bus to the train to the high-speed rail. Which, again, this is also how it works in every major city. Every major city is like this. Where can I find your t-shirt? Guys, this is actually like a friend made me this t-shirt.
At Denims, where can I find your t-shirt?
After all the Ethan Klein stuff, they made me this t-shirt. But everyone likes it so much, so like, I'm going to look into trying to make it into merch. So that's the same concept that should be applied to, or like applied here when it comes to high-speed transport and high-speed rail. But instead, because our government systems are just totally fucked and low-key we do need to start over. We make all these capitulations to all these different stupid fucking districts so this train never gets built. Instead of petitioning for some rail to get to some stops on the high-speed rail, it's just we'll just keep capitulating until nothing gets done. You know, just like Congress.
Which in turn grants some power to local governments. When it comes to infrastructure, a lot of the power and responsibility is often on this local level.
That's the compromise that we make here in the United States. We believe in local control to some extent, representative democracy. The downside of that is when you're trying to get a project at this scale built, it does take a lot of compromise.
And in order to build a 1,300-kilometer high-speed rail line, the State High-Speed Rail Authority had to compromise with a lot of local governments. In the Bay Area, politicians pushed for this
Flappy Walls of Static. Thank you guys for the subs. White people, Dini, thank you for the gifts.
route instead of this one, even though it was much more expensive and slower for travelers coming from San Francisco. And in the Central Valley, the route stops in all these cities, instead of going up this faster route, in order to ensure support from the politicians here. All of these little compromises began adding up, making the route slower and more expensive, which was a problem because the funding was already on shaky ground. When California voted in 2008, the state estimated it would need $33 billion to complete by 2020. But
I was just in New York City for a week. The subway system is so good. I wish they had someone to power wash it from time to time. Yeah. And the worst thing about it is like the New York subway system is like, it's sad that it's the best that the US has to offer. Don't get me wrong. I am a simp for the New York subway system, but let me be clear. It's pretty grimy and it's not well maintained. And there's literally like, you can see on some of the stops and some of the stations, because it's just basically a cavern that was built, right? You can see like the stalactites. It's actually on a train station. Let me see if I can find a good one. I want to see if I can find an image that like doesn't look like it's from a fucking horror movie. This is when it was frozen over. This is not quite right. Wait, here. Some of the stops are so old. Like they're so old that they just haven't been updated. And like there are stalactites in the New York City fucking cavern system. Which is like, it's kind of cool, but it's also kind of gross. Oh, fuck, dude. And like the newer stations, so like Hudson Yards was built in like the last, I thought you would show worse. Do I want to show worse? Here's like, okay, please don't hate me for showing you guys this. This is apparently on 49th Street. But like then there are like really nice stations that have been built recently. So like for example,
Free French fries is what I'm hearing.
Hudson Yards, the 34th Street one that was built like it was like in 2010, I think it was built. It's like it's gorgeous. This is what I'm trying to find a good picture. This is what the outside looks like. And then like when you're going down the escalator, there's like this really nice mosaic. And the actual train station's also really nice and clean. Like it's not anything, listen, it's not no China station, okay? Let me just say, it's not no China station. But it's nice. And then all the old stations just look bad. They look really bad. I used to go to 34th Street for work. I had to get off on the 28th Street stop on the queue. And like that stop is hurting. It's still not as bad as the L train. The L train, oh my god, every stop, I'm not joking, it looks like the SpongeBob Benadryl meme. it's the people who have to take that one. The 1, 2, 3 A, B, C, I think trains. Those are also like once you pass 140th Street, those are hurting. Like I'm not joking. The stations look like this. They look like it's like scary. A little scary. Oh, is this the new Penn station? So yeah, some of the new stations look a lot better, or like the upgraded ones or the maintained ones look really nice. It's just the ones that aren't maintained just look terrible. And like, that's the one thing I will say that's really, really bad. I live off the L and you're so right, except Bedford because rich people live there. Yep. That's the one thing I will say about the New York train station system. It's a good system, but like the stops that are not maintained are like, it's really sad. And if they actually maintained every station, it would be gorgeous. It'd look like China, but anywho.
Voters were told that California taxpayers would only have to pay $9 billion. That's because the planners were counting on the federal government to chip in $12 to $16 billion. And it made some sense. The federal government spends tens of billions of dollars a year on transportation infrastructure. The problem was only a fraction of it goes to trains. Partly because, unlike most countries with high-speed rail, the US has a stark political divide on whether we even need it. By 2010, the Democrat-controlled Congress had allocated just over $3 billion for the project. Not nothing, but not nearly as much as the state wanted. But by 2015, the Democrats had lost control of Congress to the Republicans, who opposed this kind of mass transit project.
More money for California's high-speed rail, I call it high-cost rail, is a terrible idea.
None of these funds can be used for high-speed rail.
They made it very difficult for any further federal money to reach this project, leaving it well short of funding. It's an example of how in the US, long-term projects can be at the mercy of whichever party is in power, since they often have the power to stall it at any time. And it's not just the federal government. Private citizens can also hold things up. It took less than a year for people to start suing the California high-speed rail project.
This is the problem with the US, by the way. If you need to understand this, like if you are not an American and you don't understand why the US sucks so bad, it's because the US relies so heavily on litigation and nothing else. No other systems work except litigation. So instead of the federal government stepping in and just using the same authority that, like, for example, Trump uses, where he just does whatever he wants. When it comes to things that matter, it's like, oh, I guess we just can't do anything. We're just small bean. We can't do anything.
Many cases were based on a law
And like, you don't have to infringe on people's rights to be able to do this. The reality is, like, the federal government could step in, capitulate to every single one of these cities and be like, hey, we'll build trains going there, as many trains as you need, okay? We will build as many trains as you need to get to this, but we're building this. Tell us what you need as a city. How much money do you need as a city? We're building this here. Make your list of demands. We'll negotiate, and then we're doing it. Which is, again, this is how, like, there's that one really fucking good video on China negotiating drug prices. And it's like this, like, alpha Chad, whatever. Let me see if I can find it. It's been happening. China implemented the national drug price negotiation since 2016. You cooked yourself with the car culture. I mean, like, sort of. I want to see if I can find / China Chad. Do you think I could find it? I don't think I can find it. There was an edit of this that was really funny, but it's okay. I'll just show you guys. The non-edit, the loser version. TLDR, when companies introduce new life-saving medication that's important, they have to negotiate all of the prices with the federal government, which would be the primary buyer and seller of that product, right? So the federal government has a lot of bargaining power. They can negotiate prices like pretty far down, if that makes sense. Someone hit the Sigma grind set music, yeah. And that's how the US government should operate as well. The federal government should be able to step in and say, no, this high-speed rail is really important for a variety of reasons. We will sit down, we will negotiate with every single one of these cities, give them what they need, but at the end of the day, we are building this rail. Why is drug price slashed from 700,000 to 33,000? Yeah. Is this the video? Did you find it, a Dillionaire? Yes. Price negotiation for Farxiga? Dapagliflozin? I'm sorry, I don't know the specific drug. I think it's a cancer medication, but I could be mistaken. Okay, this is the unedited version, but yeah. They go in with their set price. They are negotiated down. Hey, actually, sorry, we know what the price of this should be. Please talk to your bosses and tell us what the actual price is. The farmer representative, I don't know if I have the authority to lower this price. With such a big market in China, I will give you 5 minutes to call the CEO for a price reduction. The guy walks off, calls the CEO, comes back. Oh, okay, we can lower it a little bit. And that's still not good enough for us. You're going to need to lower it a little bit more. See, I'm here to negotiate on behalf of the whole nation's healthcare system. You will receive many benefits for being providers of healthcare. We can rest assured your medicine will gain access to hospitals in the quickest time possible. So how about another sincere offer? Can you imagine telling pharmaceutical companies, all right, be fucking for real. Just be fucking for, you want us to pay, in American terms, $500 for insulin? Go and talk to your boss. We're not paying $500 for insulin. Stop fucking with us. They call the boss, they call the CEO again. They lower it again. Okay, yeah, that's good. Sure, we can do that. We can do this lowered price, which I'm just kind of talking in circles a little bit. That's the system that should exist. But the thing is, nobody like vouches for America or like Americans. Sorry, I'm on mobile. I wanted to double check the info. The stalactites in the subway tunnels are formed from degradation of concrete, so a wee bit concerning, but crystallized calcite is not gross, and as a geologist, I'm offended by that opinion. Wait. Let me just say, I think it's cool. It just looks kind of gross when you put it next to modern-ish architecture. When you put it next to, like, tiling and metal beams, and also all the metal beams are rusty and the paint is chipping off. And then all you can see is like what looks like cum droplets coming off the ceiling. It's not pretty. When it's in a cave where it belongs, it looks very pretty. Because it's like, oh, this is where that's where it belongs. When it's in what feels like your home, it's like,
the California Environmental Quality Act, known as CEQA. CEQA requires the government to study the environmental effects of any government project, explore alternatives, and release the findings in a report.
It's very easy to find a hole in that assessment and then file a lawsuit, essentially target practice for lawyers.
Many of these lawsuits had legitimate concerns. Some farmers in the Central Valley worried about the train damaging their agricultural land, irrigation systems, and crops. But others simply used CEQA to try and keep the project from being built in their neighborhood. This is a common way in the US for private citizens to block important projects like housing or infrastructure.
It's not cheap to bring a CEQA lawsuit. Sometimes you've got very powerful homeowners groups that have sued and forced changes, or at least delayed the project and run up costs.
For the high-speed rail line, these lawsuits were like roadblocks. And in order to clear them, the state had to hire legions of expensive lawyers, which added time and costs.
I think you do want to have a participatory system. You do want to have people able to say their piece, and you want policymakers to respond. Just that you don't want to get to the point where a hyper-local interest has veto over a project, really statewide.
Thanks, Tesseract. Welcome back.
But take away local politicians and federal drama and lawsuits, and this project still would have faced problems. The state body in charge of designing and managing this project was the California High-Speed Rail Authority. There was just one problem.
The High-Speed Rail Authority had never built anything like this.
Whoops.
Obviously, it's a tried and true technology globally, but it was new in North America when California tried it. Certainly, we didn't have the competence in-house how to build it here.
When Japan and France were building their high-speed rail networks, they had legions of experienced engineers inside their governments. But the California High-Speed Rail Authority had to hire consultants and contractors to handle the design and construction.
These consultants were 4 times the cost in some cases of what it would have cost to hire someone just to do it in-house.
Another reason why the authority had to keep increasing the estimated cost of the project, which today is up to $113 billion to complete the whole line. But the state only has enough money to build this section in the rural Central Valley. Even if it can get the rest, it would probably take a few more decades to finish this project.
The high-speed rail is a cautionary tale for really big transformative
So we need more engineers. It's a good thing our colleges are very affordable.
projects in the U.S. We need all sorts of rail transit, bus lanes, new renewable energy facilities, all the things we need to do to have a more sustainable and vibrant economy.
But the U.S. is falling further and further behind its peers because the political compromises, underfunding, lawsuits, and extra costs that hampered California's high-speed rail can also happen to any other big project the U.S. takes on.
It's okay. This is good. This is good. Ha ha ha.